Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard. This is your captain speaking, Debbie Buyaki. Today, we will be taking a flight over nature's view. A 2030 climate journey story, kicking off from Nairobi, making a stop at Groundwater. This is finally where it's coming into play. Making another stop at surface water, and finally landing at sustainability. I hope you enjoy this climate journey story. Seatbelts on and wheels up. So this is where my research officially begins. I have been saying this for the past 3 episodes, but it's beginning now. My research focused on freshwater conservation and community issues, and this has been done as well in 3 topics. So it will continuously go on for the next 3 episodes discussing these 3 main topics. So let me give you some brief on the background to freshwater issues, and if I haven't already mentioned in episode 1 what freshwater issues are, and this is more like an in-depth in relation to my research. How does freshwater first of all come about? Like naturally, not in the purifying method where we talk about desalinization. How does it come about naturally? So I'd like to see if you're listening. Does anyone remember what this, I think I mentioned this during one of the first 3 episodes. How does it really come about in the natural phenomenons? One phrase, it's a process, and it's called the hydrologic or the water cycle process. So freshwater all starts as water vapor, and then it's evaporated from the surfaces of oceans, lakes, and other water bodies. This is more like a recap as well. The water vapor rises and it leaves the salts and the contaminants and all the dirt behind, and it becomes fresh in this sense when it's becoming water vapor. Changing from water to water vapor, it leaves all the contaminants behind. So the water vapor rises and it collects in drifting clouds that eventually release the water back into the earth as rain or snow. And that's how fresh water is found. I should end it at that because that's a whole lesson. But anyway, this water then collects back into water bodies, or in some sense, it seeps back through the soil into the underground reservoirs. And this is what we call aquifers. The water that's below the ground that has, in some sense, just come from the rain that we've seen how it's formed. Some goes back to the surface water, it flows into rivers, and rivers feed into lakes and stuff like that. But some of it goes underground through seeping into the soil. So the top surface of the aquifer is what we call the water table. I think that's something that's been confused when it comes to terminologies. The aquifer is like the whole body of everything. Then the water table is the surface. So we tap into the aquifer through the water table. Told you I became like a whole geographer through this research. It's really increased my knowledge and built my skills going forward. Now let's start into the comparisons of both surface water and groundwater and putting this all in the measure of sustainability. I will throw in some statistics as well to defend each side and see which one will come out as the best in terms of the question on how we should use water as a populace and use it in a way that's sustainable for future generations and also for ourselves, because if we don't have enough for ourselves, how can we talk about like 3, 4, 5 generations to come? So are you ready? It's all full match time in this case. In one corner, we have surface water, and in the other corner, we have groundwater. Let's begin. Groundwater is 100 times more abundant than surface water. This is according to NASA and the UN. So when it comes to amounts, whatever amount the surface water is, groundwater is 100 times more than that. This makes it more reliable or successfully replenishable when it comes to freshwater usage and tapping for the population. It also has like long-term effects in the terms of economical and environmental sustainability because, groundwater doesn't get as much pollutants as surface water does, unless it's really in a place where the soils have been polluted immensely. But even so, in that extent, it won't get as much pollutants as surface water would because the soil would kind of just sip a bit or filter a bit of those. as compared to surface water, which just get poured into direct effluents without any filtration. So we have a point for groundwater. 2 points actually. It's 100 times more than surface water. And number 2, it is less polluted when it comes to comparison with surface water. Surface water in this sense, and also in terms of population, it faces a lot of water stress. We are all using surface water, especially in regions that live near such water sources. It's being overly used, and I can say it's not overly used in that sense. It is overly used directly proportional to the increase in population. So if you're more per household, you'll have more showers because everyone needs to shower. So water stress is being abundantly and more of a problem when it comes to surface water as compared to groundwater. Number 2, groundwater accounts for 99% of all liquid fresh water on Earth. Can you remember the 1%? I said 1% of fresh water is available for use on Earth. Guess where the other 99% is? Groundwater. So surface water is 1% of the easily accessible fresh water for use by the population. The other 99% is groundwater. That's a whole lot of water. If we're going to talk about we need more water, we need to tap into this 99%. And maybe I'm going ahead of myself. But that's 1 point for, I think, groundwater. Surface water, okay, we can give it 1 just to be equal. Next point, groundwater remains relatively untouched by, I think this is something also being in repetition for the points I said before. It's more or less, it's 99%, so and even so it's less like explored or untouched by human activity, so it's pretty safer. I think we already talked about that. Groundwater helps our rivers and keeps them flowing. It is used for drinking, and by almost 50% of people of the US, for example, they use like groundwater to inform their rivers and drinking and household usage. When it comes to surface water, more or less it spans from groundwater because, as I'm saying, it informs our rivers and how the rivers flow from underground. And when they show up in the surface, that's surface water. So that's another point for groundwater in terms of it actually creates surface water in some certain extent. By the way, there's this whole example I was given on a tree. I think it's the fig tree. In Kenya, we call it mugumo tree. It has deep roots for sure. So sometimes in the countryside, you'd see like out of nowhere, just a stream of clean water. Turns out the roots go really deep into the soil and they break the stones that are under there, and then the groundwater gushes up through that little crack and then it forms a stream. Like, nature is so beautiful and it's such a phenomenon, because I used to wonder, out of nowhere, a whole river goes to a certain stream. Where did that stream come from if it's not like being fed into by a river? Turns out it's groundwater, and groundwater being brought forth into the earth through the trees and the roots of the trees. Another unique thing about groundwater is it's rechargeable and replenishable, unlike surface water. So surface water, when it dries, if the lake has dried, I don't think I've heard of a lake. Oh yeah, I think I have. If the lake or the river has dried, it's dried unless it comes back during another rainy season, it's gone. But if it's groundwater, sometimes there are water channels underground and they keep flowing and flowing from different zones. So it's kind of more or less rechargeable. Even if it's not raining above, where we can have more water seep into the water table, groundwater itself is replenishable because it has channels that flow through it and they interconnect, and so rain from different areas can get to this water table because it's following a certain path. And this path is not being affected by climate change or increase in temperatures that, hit the water into complete evaporation and the river dries up. That's another point for groundwater, I may say. It's replenishable and it's rechargeable and it's hard to actually deplete in the sense of human-induced activities that cause the extinct of surface water. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have a clear winner out of this. Need I continue, really? We clearly have seen that groundwater is what we should be looking into when it comes to solving the water crisis of our population. It's plenty, it's safe, it's a bit safe, maybe it needs more purification, but it's safer than, it's replenishable, and it's It's good. It's good water. I think we can honestly look into groundwater when it comes to supplying the population with water across the world. We clearly have a winner, and a round of applause for groundwater. That's the end of it. It wins the sustainability title when it comes to the safety and the security of and abundance really of water, fresh water, when it comes to climate change issues. Now let us proceed and shower our praise to the winner of the title, Groundwater. According to the UN World Water Development Report of 2022, unlocking the immense potential of groundwater today is protecting the resource for tomorrow to be, let me say, find it more and, if not more, but plentiful and enough for us to use tomorrow and for other generations to use tomorrow. That's the main essence that we should be talking about when it comes to groundwater. The abundance of groundwater resources will prove essential in meeting the increasing global demand for water, especially during these severe seasons of water stress. Groundwater system supports valuable ecosystem sources and can play a critical role, especially in climate change adaptation and mitigation. This is where we started from. Water really is life, and if we can have access to enough water, enough fresh water at an easier price and at a more abundant amount as compared to what we're seeing with surface water that's little and then it's a bit polluted and it's also stressed because we have to divide it for different purposes. Groundwater is really the way to go, and this is something I'm speaking towards governments and policymakers and humanitarian aiders who really don't think groundwater can be the solution, but it can. And it is a solution, and we have seen it in various countries, especially in the Middle East, that not only use desalination, which is quite pricey, but are now looking into agriculture that is fed by groundwater irrigation. We could go on and on groundwater and why we should, for sure, try and look into that investment as a populace. But let me shift gears and rely more on groundwater in relation to water stress that's facing surface water. But if groundwater is this big of an elephant in the room and there's this beautiful and huge statistics and all up for its, recommendations, how comes we hardly hear of its exploits across the world? How comes we're all still in the old school surface water use or trying to evaporate water for ourselves for use? Yet, groundwater is still there and it's plentiful. Something that's quite the conundrum, not only during this research, up to now, why don't we really have more explorations, maybe across the world or specifically in my country, Kenya? Why can't we capitalize on all the groundwater that we have? Because it's plenty, as I will inform you shortly. This is because groundwater is often poorly understood and consequently it's undervalued, mismanaged sometimes, or even abused. And in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, the opportunities offered by the vast aquifers remain largely unexplored. Only 3% of farmlands in the sub-Saharan Africa are actually equipped with the groundwater irrigation system. That's just the question. How comes we have all this water, especially in Africa and in my country, but it's just unexplored or unused? It's kind of, as I've said before, it's highly misunderstood. And what people don't know, people would invest in. What governments don't know, they would invest in. But lucky for you, this is why I am here through this podcast to end my research to ultimately decipher all these misconceptions and bust some myths. Let's explore groundwater. If it's this good of a thing, why is no one speaking about it? Why is it not being used as it could be used? Sustainably, though, just to sustain and ensure our population is on good terms. Groundwater ultimately will be the way we will need to go, not only in Africa, Kenya, or sub-Saharan Africa, or the rest of the world. It will be the way we will ultimately need to go, considering all the problems with surface water, which I don't want to repeat. Remember how water really holds all the fabric of the life of Earth. Water is food, water is agriculture, water is economy, water is security, water is political stability. Water is life, water is so many things. So having groundwater offer such opportunities to all of us is some key things that we need to think about going forward and how we can create even strategies on how to use it in sustainable ways. By the way, in terms of aquifers, there are aquifers that are replenishable and some that are not. So when it comes to let's go and let's start using groundwater, we need to have strategies on how we will use the water sustainably, considering that not all of them are replenishable. So we'll need strategies and guardrails on how we can tap into aquifers in a sustainable way. And this is something I've seen in my home area, where the water table there has been overly exploited and every business person is sinking a borehole. So sometimes we end up not having water because the water table has run out and we're now waiting for the rains to replenish it. So we will need as well strategies on how we can use this resource in a way that's, upright, and a way that's sustainable for ourselves and for future generations. Unlocking the full potential of groundwater for ourselves and for future generations will require not only like the strategies I've spoken about, but also strong concerted efforts to manage and use it. Exploring groundwater, maybe I can also say this is one of the reasons it's hardly used, is exploring groundwater is quite pricey. And as compared to surface water, it's just there. You just need a pump to, supply water systems across a community. But for groundwater, you need to invest in it. So even if it's pricey, we need to invest in it in a way that's wise, so that you just don't be drilling boreholes and then you're making mistakes and they dry up within 2 years, and that's now a waste of money. So there's a lot of intricate balance and specifics that we need to talk about when it comes to exploring groundwater and its use across the world. So this is something that the Director General of UNESCO said. As the world adapts to a changing climate and rising population, groundwater will play an essential role in meeting the growing demand of food and drinking water. This is something that's been repeated a lot during this episode and the previous one. We just need to find solutions to our problems. The second quote is by Dr. Elaine as well, a great pillar that I will still introduce to you as we go on. So hang on to find out who Dr. Elaine is. Water, food, energy, and green energy minerals are intricately intertwined, but water is the universal enabler. So we can have all these resources and all these things, but if we don't have water to process the minerals, if we don't have water to grow the food from the seeds that we've produced, if we don't have water to produce the energy in hydroelectric energies, we have nothing really. Water is really the enabler, and it needs to be on conversations and on tables everywhere when it comes to climate change, when it comes to economy, when it comes to political stability. We should have a conversation on water because it really stops everything. Life really stops when there's no water, and it's such a challenge going forward. Let us remain optimistic, because even after more than 40 years of Earth observation through NASA, there is a lot of proof that all groundwater, underground potable water resources combined are 100 times greater than the combination of all surface water in lakes and rivers and stuff like that. This is a quote as well from Dr. Elaine. Basically, there is hope when it comes to our issues with water. I know the previous episodes we've been talking about the issues when it comes to fresh water and how it's not enough and we need it for almost everything that supports our lives and have comfortable lives. But here's the thing. There's a lot of water, but underground. And if we plan to use it sustainably and in strategic ways and in safe ways, we'll be okay as a planet. We'll just be fine. So there's a lot of hope. Now, having discovered that, and this is in conclusion, having discovered that the way to go is groundwater, from reading numerous reports as well in my research and speaking to experts, I decided not only to leave it as a blanket statement of groundwater across the world, but I decided to zoom in on Africa and, if possible as well, continue to make it more context specific by zooming in on my country, Kenya, to try establish the actual situation of groundwater exploration and its usage and what's our situation not only in Africa, but specifically in Kenya. Is there groundwater that I discovered in Kenya? Is it fresh water? Is it safe for human use? Most importantly, is it replenishable? Is it sustainable? All these questions I will dive into in my next research topic, which is my next episode. I hope you will tune in to find out all these things when it comes to context-specific exploration and my research when it comes to groundwater in Kenya and in Africa. And I hope you've understood my first research topic, because what will I do if you don't? So groundwater to surface water, we have a better stake at groundwater and we need to run on that idea. Next episode, now that we found out on groundwater is the way to go, what do we do, Africa? What do we do, Kenya? We'll see. We'll find out. Thank you as usual, for all your attention. I welcome any questions on this research topic, and I hope to see you on the next flight for